Good evening, everyone. Welcome. It's wonderful to see all these faces on the screen. First of all, I want to say Happy New Year to everyone. I also want to say Happy MLK Day. We are honored to be doing this event on MLK Day with two special guests. And we also are honored to do this on behalf of all the people who have fought the insanity of racism through all human history, and more recently from the Bridget Selma to the fight that continues today. We hope we will honor that effort in this discussion today, some of which will be about racism and topics very much aligned with that. We have we do have a large crowd coming in, so we're going to kind of do a few things as everybody gets admitted, and then we'll launch into the main program in a couple minutes. So first of all, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Lumunos. Lumunos is a small but mighty organization. We're about 100 years old, started by Reverend Sam Shoemaker, who also was pivotal in the formation of AA. In fact, some people think Sam Shoemaker wrote the 12 steps. We continue to do that kind of work in communities like this, but also in specific professional communities. And very much these days, we do a lot of work in hospitals. So our mission is to help people live fuller, more authentic lives as they align their life choices and relationships with their sacred values. So we're all about calling. And in this particular context, we're going to talk about calling in regard to doing work in the world as opposed to other types of callings that people have to be writers or whatever they may do, to be parents, all those things. We're going to be talking about more of these being out and doing that kind of work in the world. I want to mention our values are we're adaptive, we're authentic, we're faithful, we're responsible, and we're relational. And relational, all of those are pivotal to what we do. A lot of our normal work in a smaller community, smaller gatherings, we'd be doing breakout conversations and trying to really foster that relational aspect of our work and have authentic conversations. We try to learn from each other. So I'm going to start with a poem from the amazing Amanda Gorman. It's called New Day's Lyric. What was cursed, we will cure. What was plagued, we will prove pure. Where we tend to argue, we will try to agree. Those fortunes we forswore, now the future we foresee. Where we weren't aware, we are now awake. Those moments we missed are now the moments we make and the moments we meet. Our hearts, once all together beaten, now all together beat. We chose that poem because a lot of what we're going to talk about is about this community and the work that being part of a community, how pivotal that is to doing work in the world and taking on the hard things that we do in our own personal lives and, and the bigger things, whether the world of activism, whether you're an activist for, a month, a week, an hour, a month, an hour a week, or an hour a day, however you might take that on. Or maybe this is something you're thinking about getting into and you want to understand that better. So that's kind of the background about this. The logistics here are, we're going to go till 9 o'clock. The first part will be, I'll ask some questions of our two guests. And then during that, we're going to ask you to put questions into the chat. And two of my colleagues, Becca and Doug, will be monitoring the chat as it goes. And then at about 8:30 or so, we'll switch over and we'll take your questions. And they will be sending those questions, trying to distill your questions down to me. And then I'll ask Nana and Bill. We're going to ask you to stay muted. There's a lot of people on the call. We're going to try to avoid that background noise problem. And also want to let everybody know that we're recording this event. So with that, let me begin. We are really honored to have Bill McKibben with us. Bill's 1989 book, The End of Nature, is regarded by many as the first and pivotal book for a general lay audience about climate change. He's since gone on to write 17 or more books. He's a regular columnist, as many of you would probably know, in the New Yorker and Rolling Stone. He's on TV all the time. This man is all over the place. In addition to that, it was interesting to see the prizes that Bill has won. In 2013, he won the Gandhi Peace Prize. In 2014, he won the Right Livelihood Award, which is kind of a alternative prize to the Nobel Prize, and a list of others. But the one that really caught my attention was in 2013, he won the Thomas Merton Award, which I think to a lot of folks in this audience will be particularly intrigued by that, and maybe he'll say a word about that. So Bill is a whirlwind of energy, as I'm sure you all know, and he's going to be talking tonight one of his latest endeavors, which is called thirdact.org. Other speaker is Nana Firman. We're honored to have Nana. Nana got into this world when you may remember in 2004, a tsunami that came in the Indian Ocean and hit the countries so hard down there. And so Nana was in Indonesia, where she's from, and she was working with the World Wildlife Federation as they began to engage in the process with others about rebuilding and to think about how to rebuild in a way that was environmentally conscious and sustainable. Since then, she has done a whole host of things like Bill. I'll mention a couple. One, that in 2015, she was named the White House Champion of Climate Change for climate safe leaders. And among other things, Nana is now the senior advisor of GreenFaith, and we're going to all get to hear a little bit more about what GreenFaith does as well. So with that, I will launch into a couple questions. So, Bill, if I may start with you, could you tell us a little bit about Third Act?
Absolutely. First of all, what a pleasure to be here. What a pleasure to be with Nana. I'm very eager to hear her talk because I got to play a tiny role in starting GreenFaith years and years ago, and the religious environmental movement out of which it grew. And it's such a pleasure to see it prospering and doing important work. And greetings to everybody from up on the spine of the Green Mountains. I'm very hopeful that the internet's not going to go out in the course of the next hour. We had the first big snowstorm of the year up here today, and it could not be more beautiful outside right now. And the wind has dropped, so I think we'll probably be okay, but we shall see. Look, the short story here is that probably after my early part of my life, which was spent at the thing that I'm actually know how to do, which is write, it became clear to me that though we were winning the argument about things like climate change, we were losing the fight, because the fight wasn't about data and evidence and reason. The fight was about what fights are usually about: money and power. And history indicated that there were ways to bring people together to stand up to big money, stand up to the fossil fuel industry. The first big effort I did with a bunch of young people, 7 college students here in Vermont, we started something called 350.org about 12, 13 years ago that became the first iteration of a global grassroots climate movement. And we've organized 20,000 demonstrations in every country on earth except North Korea, and sort of spearheaded the work around the Keystone Pipeline and this vast fossil fuel divestment movement. So I love working with young people, and it's been amazing to watch young people flood into this space. The Greta Thunbergs of the world on up, who are doing astonishing work and who are all my friends and dear colleagues. It became clear to me, maybe on the occasion of about my 60th birthday, that those of us who were older were not perhaps keeping up our end quite as well, at least taken as a whole generationally. And that seemed to me a shame, because I don't think we can make change on the scale and at the pace we need unless we also have the heavy involvement of the 70 million people from the baby boom generation and the silent generation above them. Just to give you the examples of why these generations are so important, we vote in extraordinary numbers, and so even above our large size, exert political influence too often to block change that needs to come in our society. And fairly or not, most of the money has ended up in our bank accounts. About 70% of the financial assets in America belong to the boomers or the silent generation, compared with about 5% for millennials. So if we're going to change either politics or finance and the economy, we're going to need participation. That's why we started the third act. There's a lot of anecdotal talk that people become more conservative as they age, and even some data to suggest it. But we can't let it happen. And I think particularly in regard to these generations, we don't need to give up, at least without a good fight. Because those of us of this era, in our first act, were around to either participate in or bear witness to truly profound social, cultural, political transformation. The first Earth Day, the women's movement, originally the civil rights movement, the anti-war movement. It was a remarkable period, and much was accomplished. In our second act, taken as a whole, not individuals, but taken as a whole, it's possible we were a bit more interested in consumerism than in citizenship. That's water under the bridge. Now we emerge in our third act with resources, skills, with grandkids, and on the edge of leaving behind a really dubious legacy. We may be the first generations to leave the world a profoundly worse place than we found it. And so we've begun to organize around two issues: protecting the stability of our democracy and protecting the stability of our climate. These two things seem to me to be absolutely generational issues at the heart of the world today. We're going to do what we can. And we're in early days yet, but so far, so good. My colleague, Bob Fulkerson, is on the call tonight. And if people want more information, bob@thirdact.org is a good place to go to help join in and enlist. Or you can just go to the website. Our next big national call will be on January 26th, and Bill Moyers will be joining us as the kind of special guest. As we start to plan not only this work around democracy, but also an effort to go after the big banks that finance the fossil fuel industry. That's our special campaign for the year, and I think it has a possibility of moving the needle.
Thank you, Bill. Nana, would you like to say a bit about GreenFaith and the good things you folks are doing?
Yes. First of all, greetings to all of you, and thank you so much for having me here today in this important Martin Luther King Day. It is such a pleasure for me to meet all of you, even though we are meeting virtually. I introduce myself a little bit. I'm originally from Indonesia, as being mentioned earlier by Dan. I've been living in the US in the last 10 years. However, I did my college back in the days in the U.S. and then, when I finished my undergraduate and graduate school, I returned back to Indonesia. That's how I get involved in the, in the process of recovery after the tsunami and the earthquake in 2004. So GreenFaith is a global multi-faith network of people working together to take actions in regards to our systemic devastation that is threatening the life of our planet today, as Bill already mentioned. And it's really a pleasure for me also to share this moment with Bill McKibben, who is I'm a big fan of him. So when we see and hear the news today in many parts of the world, including here in the United States, we are all impacted by the environmental degradation and also climate change, which has very dreadful consequences, like that we see all this frequent and more often and severe disasters like floods, droughts, wildfire, landslides, food shortage, or even massive migration and death. But based on the Pew Research study in 2012, I think, or 2013, almost 85% of the world population identified themselves in affiliation to spiritual or faith traditions. That's a big number. Yet we hardly see this potential playing an important role in fighting environmental degradation or climate crisis. And we know in many faith traditions, the tradition itself teach us that this earth and all the people are sacred, and now they're all also at risk. So GreenFaith is building a worldwide multi-faith climate and environmental movement, and together our members and our network create communities to transform our individual self, our individual behavior, as well as our own spiritual or religious institutions. And eventually, with those, we also change our society at large to protect this planet and our home and create a compassion, loving, and just world. So we work on individual level, institutional level, as well as we want a systemic change. So at GreenFaith, we believe that people of faith and spirit are called to speak and act against this immoral and devastating situation. And as faith communities, we have a unique role, and we haven't really played that role very, very well so far. So this is the time, and at GreenFaith, we are building this community around the world to fight together to create a future of compassion, loving, and just world. I think that's a little bit introduction for me.
Thank you so much for that. My next question is, maybe Nana, we'll start with you. You both have been at this for a long time, and there was a moment that you made the decision to get into it, and there may be people on this call who were at that moment. And then there are people who were at the other end. They've been in a long time and they're trying to hang in there, and as you two have. So I'm wondering what you might want to say about those topics as encouraging the people who are thinking about jumping in and talking to the rest of us or everyone about what it means to be part of these groups, and how do you stay with it?
Yeah, thank you, Dan. So for me, first and foremost, as mentioned, like as I mentioned earlier about like being a faith, like people of faith. So like I identify myself first as a person of faith. I'm a Muslim. So I see what is my journey and my mission here when I live in this world. So I see this part of my what I'm doing as also my worship. So it's not just like being an activist, because people ask me this a lot, like, so like, like, how do you become an activist? So I said, well, maybe activist is like the last thing, but first, like, I'm trying to practice my own faith. So I think like many people also trying to do that. And so first is like commitment. Like, I think this is like a personal and individual, like you have a commitment, and then I try to focus on what I'm trying to do. And also I think like consistency, that's very hard, perseverance also, but you need that kind of like, like consistency and perseverance and patience, like when you're doing these things. And I think like especially like what I'm very interested in third act that that Bill just mentioned about, like like people at some point in their life, especially if you already have grandchildren, what kind of legacy that you're going to leave for your children, for your grandchildren, for other people's grandchildren, so like for your future generation. So I think that's what keeps me going. And also like having good company and network like this, like this gathering today, because like that's like in like like this work is not easy. We are fighting a like a giant, but then if we are together and we support each other, like there's time when you feel low, then but you have like good company and good network, good friends, and they're going to lift your spirit up. So then you always be on the positive side. You always have a lot of hope, even though it's sometimes like devastating. So yeah, so for me, it's like, that's always like give me like support. And also as people of faith, I think like when we hold strong to our faith, that's also giving me strength in doing this thing, that when I wake up in the morning, that I feel like excited, and also like like positive, want to do something to like, even though it's small thing, maybe like not really like like a small thing, but then I'm doing something. So I think that's kind of spirit that we need to have with us also, like. And then I think like like having like what kind of legacy, like especially we're talking in MLK Day today, what kind of dreams that we will leave our future generation, and then like and make it into action.
Thank you. That was a great answer. It reminds me of, I grew up a Roman Catholic family with a giant family. And one of my aunts was a nun. And when she got into her 80s, one day she said to me, Dan, I don't pray anymore. And I'm like, well, I almost fell out of my chair. I don't go to church anymore. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, my prayer now is the work that I do with other people and going out for long walks in nature. And, that's kind of along the lines of what you were saying, and even combining those two things. So it's wonderful to hear you say that. It's very encouraging for me. Bill, can I ask you the same question?
Well, it's a very good question. And first of all, just what a pleasure to hear Nana speaking and to kind of reflect on the fact of how far we've come. 30 years ago in the religious world, there really wasn't much of an environmental movement. Conservative, liberal churches thought the environment was something you got to once you'd taken care of hunger and poverty and war. Conservative churches thought it was just a way station on the road to paganism. Now we're at the point where the most important religious figure in the world, perhaps Pope Francis, has written the single most powerful critique of modernity in his, summation around climate change. So there's real wonderful things happening. When I reflect on the question of how one keeps going, because as you say, I've been at this for a long time. I wrote The End of Nature when I was 27, I guess. One of the things is just that there's this long lineage of people behind us who have, Martin Luther King Day is a good day to reflect on that, and I've been thinking about it some. That wonderful line of King's that he always ended speeches with, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. It comes originally from Theodore Parker, Unitarian minister in Massachusetts, grew up in the same town I did in Lexington. And he was one of the early abolitionists and one of the first mega church pastors in America. He helped start Unitarianism, and he had a congregation of 2,000 in Boston with Louisa May Alcott and Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Julia Ward Howe and people. So I was thinking about that lineage going forward, and the fact that as abolition turned into the anti-colonial movements of the 20th century and the civil rights movement, it produced one great leader after another, and many whose names we don't know, who really who developed this new technology of nonviolent social movements. We know about Gandhi, but my favorite character of all, and I don't know whether Nana knows about him or not, but my great hero is a man named Ghaffar Abdul Khan, Badshah Khan, Pathan Muslim from the border country of what's now Pakistan and Afghanistan. Gandhi's great colleague, they called him the frontier Gandhi. Gandhi said he was the only person who ever really understood what he was about, who built an army, a nonviolent army of 400,000 people who took an oath never to fight back, and indeed were slaughtered by the thousands by the British, but did more than anybody else almost to turn the tide against the colonial power. And then, of course, one thinks of Dr. King today, and 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 those things that some of us were just old enough or were just around just to see the beginnings of. And I think at the time, maybe we thought that Dr. King had helped solve the problem, that people were going to be able to vote, and segregation was, legal segregation was coming to an end. And of course, he accomplished great miracles, but it's become abundantly clear that he didn't, and no one has managed to end either racism or the inequality that it produces. And so these fights go on, and they are inextricably linked. The fights around racism and around colonialism are the same as the fights around climate change. And we have different tactics and different victories we need and things, but they're all very bound up together, and they come out of that lineage of people building movements. So I'll just end by saying, I think the most important things people can do with their lives are join in with others in these movements to help change what needs changing, to help protect those who need protecting. And we're at a moment when that calling has never been clearer. If we don't get it right, and get it right very soon, we're not going to have a world where those kind of lineages can carry on and survive. We're just all going to be in some kind of horrible survival mode. And that's the thing we don't want. So if anybody's been keeping their nonviolent powder dry, now is the moment to figure out how to get off your best shot.
Thank you for that. I'll make it a little bit personal in the sense of myself going through this and kind of getting to a point like, how do I keep going? There was a quote at the beginning about that from Dr. King, and you begin to realize you really are into it. We moved into a realm where you have to tangle some pretty big spiritual questions. You can't just kind of, you're drawn into it because it's such a hard thing to do. And you begin to realize, oh, if I write this letter and, help conduct a meeting, the problem won't be solved tomorrow. And I'm a Western guy. I was raised as a scientist and an engineer. And, I want to do my spreadsheet, do my little experiment, do a thing. And, the problem is solved. And it took me so long to realize that, okay, that's not going to happen in this realm. Of course, I was late to this whole game anyway. But then to begin to realize, you have to shift your thinking around, that it's about being part of community. It's about trying to take small steps. It's about all those things. And there's it goes down through human history. There's so many who have led the way, and so much we can learn from that. So my next question, before I do that, I want to remind people, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. And in a little bit, we're going to switch gears, and we'll be reading some of your questions. But Bill, I was wondering if you had any questions you'd like to ask Nana, in whatever realm you would like.
I'd love to, since I was just talking about some of my heroes, I'm curious who one or two of hers are.
Oh, okay. So yeah, for me is so I have my mentor, who is now, I think he's about 90 years old. His name is Fajlun Khalid in the UK. Maybe some of you know or read his book. So he's my mentor. So he's the one who told me a while ago when I was just starting, and that if you are going to be on this journey, you have to put all your mind and heart, everything on it, and and there is no turning back. And of course, back then I was as young person, and I was still trying to explore and see different things that I took the words lightly, but I think more and more what he said, it's have meanings to me. And also how he supported me when everyone is turning like, kind of like put me down. So I think like on that, I don't like, like we need to have that from time to time in our journey. We always need somebody who's like very supportive of us, or sometimes like I call like, in a Muslim world, sometimes if I just speak out, and because I'm a woman, like speak out, and then like, we have to change this way and da 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 da, and they're like, who are you to say that? And but lately I realized that I have this allied imam, so the imam who are behind me and supporting me. So whatever I said, and then they're going to endorse me. So I have like a few of them that supporting me right now, that are like, like those are, like my sort of like, like my, like my hero, because they support me. Yes, I do the work, but then sometimes I need this moral support, especially it's like an endorsement. But when they say it, everybody kind of like listen, and then they actually like acknowledge what I'm trying to say or to do. So like from time to time I realized that I didn't like, I took it very lightly earlier, like, like in my journey. But then now I realize that those are my ally, that like I need them to support me. So then like, so I think like we need to have that like, in our journey, like no matter who you are, because that's very like, people are going to feel like down, like from time to time. So yes, thank you for that question. I never thought about that. Yeah.
Well,
And
we're going to see if you might have a question for Bill that he has not thought of.
so yeah, so actually like, I bought your book in 2007, Fight Global Warming Now. So a friend of mine, actually I was still working in WWF, and then he's like, oh, like you should like buy this book. And I bought your book. And so I didn't even know that I was going to work on a climate issue, because it was like more like environmental sustainability. That's like, so in 2007 I didn't even know I was going to focus more and more and more in the climate issue. So I wanted to ask you, Bill, what is how do you stay positive in a dire or a challenging times? Like, what is your lowest of the low, and like, how do you stay positive in overcoming that?
It's a very good question. And I don't always manage to stay positive. I mean, look, the book that I wrote about this 30 years ago had the cheerful title, The End of Nature. So, I'm not a Pollyanna about any of this. But the things that keep me going at the moment are the understanding that scientists and engineers have now done their job and given us the tools we need. We've got cheap, abundant, renewable energy that we could put to work. We could stop burning stuff on this planet and rely instead on the big ball of burning gas that the good Lord hung in the sky 93 million miles away, and we'd be fine. And the second thing that keeps me going is just watching people flood into this work from all over the last decade. There was a horrible long period of time when I felt like, when you feel like you're in a nightmare and some monster is coming at you and you're trying to warn everybody, but they can't hear you speak, or they're not paying attention or things. And that's what it felt like for quite a while. Those days are over, and it's wonderful to see, especially young people, so engaged. I've last year in September, I found myself, I had to take a week off to write college recommendations for people who I think of as just close working colleagues all over the world, who just happen to be 17 and are ready to go to college now, but who I've been working with all this time. And that was wonderful. And it was one of the reasons that kind of reminded me why we better get older people with their butts in gear too, because it's not okay to take the biggest problems that the world's ever faced and assign them to 17-year-olds as extra homework. This is going to take everybody, and it's really going to take elders behaving the way that we need elders to work in a working world. if I had one aspiration for third act, it would be to kind of erase that, my least favorite bumper sticker, the one that people sometimes put on the back of their RVs and things that says, "I'm spending my kid's inheritance." I hate that one. And instead, we've got to replace it with people who are guarding their kids' inheritance, making sure that there's a planet and a democracy, the planet and the democracy that we were given, that we managed to pass on.
That's wonderful. I mean, like that's wonderful to hear that, because I also realize like more and more like young people are in this work, and we really need this intergenerational work together, because like this is not just their responsibility, but
Amen.
oh yes, all of
Amen.
us is our responsibility. So we better start working together, like supporting the young people as well. Like yes, and then in GreenFaith, yes, because we are like faith-based, and then we have the youth and we have the elders, and
Yep.
how do we actually put them together also, like like work together as supporting each other. Yes, I really love that.
Thank you for that. We're getting a lot of great questions. And there's a few where the realm is kind of communicating with other people. And let's maybe not frame that around with communicating with the people who are so far, the climate deniers. Let's not worry about those folks. But the people who are kind of not, they believe climate change is a problem and it's real, but they either feel like there's nothing they can do about it or whatever, they're not engaging. What messages do you impart to them and us as messengers of the work you do? What would you like us to be amplifying in your thinking as we go out into the world, do what we do?
Well, I can take a stab at that. The problem with climate change in particular is it seems so big and we seem so small that it's very hard for people to imagine that they can have any real effect. And truthfully, that's a correct intuition at this point when it comes to individual action. I'm very glad that I've got solar panels all over the roof, and that's how I'm talking to you tonight and so on. But I do not try to fool myself that that's how we're going to solve this. We are way past the point where we're going to make the climate math square, one Tesla at a time, one vegan dinner at a time, whatever. The most important thing an individual can do is come together with others in movements large enough to make basic political and economic change. And right now, I got to say, I try hard not to be discouraged, but what's happening in Washington right now is really discouraging. We're watching Joe Biden and a lot of other good people beat their head against what seems to be an almost impenetrable wall on these questions. And it's one of the reasons why, we're going to work hard to try and make our democratic system work better and to end some of its archaic. But we also need, because time is so short, to let people exercise their agency in a place where they really can do it. That's why we're taking on banks this year. The four big American banks have given more than $1 trillion to the fossil fuel industry since the Paris Climate Accords were signed. They didn't need Donald Trump to sabotage the thing. They were willing to do it themselves. So we're going to get people to sign this pledge that by year's end, if Citi and Chase and Wells Fargo and Bank of America haven't ceased that, then we're going to move our accounts and cut up our credit cards. And I don't know whether that'll have enough effect, but I think it might. We've run this fossil fuel divestment campaign that now is at $40 trillion in endowments and portfolios that have divested. And that's had a huge effect on the oil companies. We need to keep weakening them in all the ways that we can, partly because, and this goes back to Washington, they've so carefully gamed the political system that as long as they retain the power they have now, our odds of getting rational policy ever adopted at a national level remain small.
Can I add that? So it's very interesting that you mentioned about the finance, and we at GreenFaith, we also talk about finance in terms of like faith, like faith institution finance. As we all know that faith institution around the world have that huge, like financial capacity. And Bill, I just saw like your Twitter like earlier today or yesterday uh, about like faith washing. So like if a faith institution like putting your money into fossil fuel like investment, then it's like that's considered like faith washing. I like that term. So this February, on the 24th of February, we GreenFaith, we are going to host a multi-faith climate finance, where we are going to invite like people from different faiths, like talk about what is the climate finance from the faith perspective. As we know that faith institution has their own financial capacity, and they also have a power to put it in the right way. So not, like forget about this old archaic investment that is already destroying our earth today. So then this is the time that we start talking also from this faith institution, because they have the structure already and they need to make the move also, like to give an example to the rest of the world. So I would like to invite all of you, if you're interested, like to check out in our website for further information.
Keep me posted on that one. That's also a personal interest. And also the idea that, that we all can be doing things individually. It's not actually hard to divest yourself if you have an IRA account. It's not hard. There are banks out there doing really interesting things now. Like,
Don't do it by yourself, because they'll never notice. Wait, join together, do it as, see, that's our job here is not personal salvation. Our job is figuring out how to make this work on a scale that can take care of things in a huge way. So yes, you're absolutely right. It's not hard. And that's what we're going to be doing at Third Act this next year, is helping people join together to make them, to make them a little mightier.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, because it reminds me of the idea of why it's so important to connect to GreenFaith, the Third Act, because of exactly what Bill just said. The way they're thinking about scale, the way they're thinking about what are the real problems, it's easy to, we all try to do things in our personal lives that are good. But if we really want to change this, we have to change some very basic things, the way money and other things move around. This question must be one that a lot of people are asking about, because I got a bunch of indications from my colleagues. So it's a question about yourself. As you've gone through this journey of where you began and where you are now, how have you changed spiritually? Nana, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I think like I was reminded by your story about your aunt then. So like about, like being spiritual, what is that? Like, like what does that mean? Like, so like for me, more and more I see like everything that I'm doing is like it's spiritual. So not like, it's I mean, like I don't separate that anymore, and it becoming like it's embedded, like I feel like it's embedded in me, that I think like if I see myself like 20 years ago, it's probably like not like this. So I feel like, like this kind of like getting like even like, like more engaged on this work, and understanding more, and also meeting like more people and engaging more people, and how this destruction has destroyed the people and the planet. So it's like so I feel like this is like very dear and near to me. And I forgot to mention earlier that I was born in the eastern part of Sumatra Island in Indonesia, where is the rainforest area. So like growing up, I was very proud that I was born in the rainforest. But then like we see like what happened in the rainforest today. So that's like my spiritual, like I fight to keep the rainforest, all those, like exotic animals that I was mentioned that where I was from, they're no longer there, or they're like very like, they're just like, like their number is less and less every day. So, but they're also, I see them as creation of God. And it's like, it's no different than us. So what makes us have this power to, like to live as we are, but then like, like with the consequences of others. So I think that is like becoming like very spiritual to me, whereas like before maybe like, like your spiritual like ritual is this, like, your it's part of your spirituality, but now it's like everything that I do, it's becoming like spiritual to me. It's like, it has meaning in my heart and in my mind. So everything that I do and I act, it's come from that, from within. So yeah. And I think like people on this journey also like, will experience almost the same thing, because I talk to many people. They also like, we share this kind of like moments and also like journey together. That makes it like more, even makes us more stronger and more like, like hopeful, like, in terms of like difficulties.
What a good way to say it. I'll just say, I find in my experience that things just get stripped down and simpler as time goes on. Because of where I was born, I'm a member of the Christian tradition, and Methodist in particular. But I find I have less and less interest in theology and more and more interest in just the basic simple ideas. I mean, for me, the Gospels are fully centered in the idea that our job is to love one's neighbor. That's it. I mean, that's, if you boil away all the sap like we do up here in Addison County in the spring when we're making syrup, that's what you're left with. Love one's neighbor. And that's not what we're doing. We're drowning our neighbors and causing diseases to spread to our neighbors, and making it hard for them to farm, and losing their homes and farms to the rising sea, and on and on and on. And there's just no way to imagine oneself as a faithful child of God if you're not trying what you can to turn that around.
Boy, I could say a lot. I think, part of what we're talking about here is, and it came up before, Bill, you were talking about, we think about our children and grandchildren, we think about a community, and we think about loving each other. And then we think about, well, we live on this planet, which in effect loves us. I mean, it takes care of us. It's our home. And I've recently been doing a lot of reading in that regard. And there was a great book by Kimmerer, whose first name I'm escaping.
Robin Kimmerer.
Yeah. And she's written some great things about the intersection of what we're talking about here, but also biology and science, and all these things are all connected. And you say, this is a miracle. I mean, it's a miracle while we're all talking to each other here. It's a miracle that exists.
Brag for a minute and say that Robin Wall Kimmerer is one of the original advisors at Third Act, and one of the great people in the whole world. If you haven't read her books, especially maybe Braiding Sweetgrass, you're in for a great treat.
Yeah. And she comes out of so many different angles there, including activism. We have time for maybe one more. It's a little different. There is a question that's coming in about folks like, it's in a book I haven't heard of before, but it's called Speed and Scale by John Doerr. And apparently this book talks about what people like Bill Gates and others who are wealthy, powerful people who seem to be sincere in their efforts, and kind of what how do you react? Are they headed in the right direction? Are there, Bill, you were talking about the idea of putting, trying to apply pressure. Do you like what people like Bill Gates is doing? Or are they people we should also be trying to put pressure on and change?
I reviewed Gates's book last year for the New York Times, and I didn't give it a particularly good review. He's behind I think he's probably sincere in wanting to help, but he's way behind the science and the times here, and continuing to want to spend, do endless amounts of research into exotic technologies and things, not understanding, and this was the point of my critique, that the price of solar power and wind power is now so cheap that we could deploy it at scale quickly and get a lot done. Gates is on the better end of this spectrum, I must say. I find myself a little frightened by the rise of the multi-billionaire class, and I don't think it's a. I think it's an interesting sign that the one thing they all share in common is an intense desire to get in rocket ships and leave the planet. There are days when I think that might not be the worst thing that could ever happen, to tell you the truth. We need people with a more powerful appreciation of what's going on this earth. And part of that's about the environment, and part of it's inextricably bound up with the inequality that those people represent. Between them, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos have more money than the bottom 50% of the American population. It doesn't matter how good your intentions are about anything. That's not a kind of world that's sustainable either environmentally or socially for much longer, it seems to me.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on that topic, Nana?
Yeah,
Or maybe
and
the
I just maybe
technology.
just a little bit like their income when you combine is actually more than the GDP of some countries, which is like we are talking about inequality. And part of this problem also this degradation of environment, and also like climate crisis, that is actually those are related to the inequalities. So when we talk about like this issue, is not just a scientific issue, because like Bill already mentioned, like the scientists and the engineers and like the technocrat already found the solutions. But like our problem is even deeper than that. The inequality, the systemic like corrupt like the corrupt systemic that we are experiencing like every day here in this country as well as like around the globe, that putting like more and more like destruction onto our planet. So I think we need to wake up to realize that is something wrong, that we need to do to change that together. We can no longer just do it ourselves. Like yes, individual change is good, but then it's like, okay, just like me as a person, like individually, like doing something good is I'm only good for myself, but like what does it do like to the society? So like we need to come together, and even though it's hard, then like we are going to go through this. And I always have this way of like holding our hands together. Like we hold our hands together, so we are in the low and the high together. It's like because then in order for us to change this, we have to we have to face it together. There's no way like just one person facing it, or like 2-3 people facing it, and the rest of us is just sitting and then just like, okay, things going to change by itself. No, it's not going to change by itself. We need to make the change. So we need to put our hands on it. And we need to be, we call it in GreenFaith, to be bold, especially like for the faith communities, for the faith leaders. We need to be bold, because in history, faith leaders are the one who makes the change. So, and faith communities are the one who makes the change. So this is the time to make the change also, because the problem is so dire, and we are losing people, losing like everything in this planet every day, and we can no longer afford that, because then it's going to affect our future generation.
I think, if you kind of summarize there, go back to the frame of what we're talking about. If you dig under the hood, it seems to me, I'm no theologian, but it seems to me that the Jesus and Mahatma and the Buddha, Muhammad, all the great spiritual leaders down through the ages, and then, back coming up through time, this is what they're talking about. It's about community. It's about love. It's about reaching out up and down, as you were saying. So, the connections are pretty strong. So thank you so much. Doug is going to close out here in a second, but I want to say thank you so much, and also encourage everyone to, if any of this.
Can I invite? Oh, can I have like one more thing? I want to invite everyone here. If you're people of faith, this coming March to May, there's going to be a lot of religious festivals, like from different faiths, from Muslims, Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, Hindu, Sikh, and others also, I think. So in GreenFaith, we are creating this moment as a sacred season where we are going to put our faith into this movement and make the change together. So please be on the lookout, check out in our website, in GreenFaith website. Thank you.
So send me those things, both of you, and I'll be a conduit into this community. And thank you so much. Doug, would you like to bring us home? Thank you.
Yes, and if you would like to do something even sooner, next Monday at this organization, Lumunos, our mission is around helping people discern their call, and especially in the complexities of their call. So putting together your call as an activist or a potential activist with your other roles that are important to your life as a parent, spouse, partner, caring for aging parents, your work and your volunteer efforts in the community. It's complicated to put all that together. And so for 100 years, we've been helping people sort out the complexities of their call. What do they need to set down if they're going to say yes to further action in some area, like we've been talking about? So we decided that we would have a follow-up event. So next Monday, same time, same station, there will be a Lumunos event, kind of call 101. How do you discern a call? How do you make some of the hard choices? What are some models, some tools and resources? So we invite you to that. Lumunos.org is our website, and you'll be getting a follow-up email for that. Thanks to all of you for joining us tonight. Our sponsor for this event is Maggie Everett, who's a wonderful, faithful woman. If you have ideas for other people you would like to bring to you to address this topic or others, and I have to say, Bill, thank you for mentioning loving your neighbor, because we have just recently decided that that is our theme for this year. We were just talking about the logo at our staff meeting today. So loving our neighbor is our theme for this year, and we're going to be offering a series of events all having to do with what does it mean to love our neighbor, drawing both from our tradition in the Christian world, but the way that other faith traditions bring that forth as well. So if you have ideas for other speakers for us, send those along. If you would like to help sponsor an event, definitely be in touch. But thanks for joining us tonight. So grateful for your presence and for your work in the world. Thank you.